Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Sequel Q&A. My name's Doug. So next week's sequel has us back in the genre of horror with Psycho Cop Returns, and I was lucky enough to interview the star, Officer Joe Vickers himself, Robert Shafer. He delivers some epic one-liners in that movie. He talks about a possible third movie and how Rob was so integral in the making of the first one. It's a story you have to hear to believe. And of course, we talked about
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
His epic role on The Office, how he went from West Virginia to Hollywood, his love of theater, and one thing I loved about Rob was talking about old Hollywood, his love of Burt Reynolds, The Duke. We talked about Charles Bronson, Marlon Brando, and lots more. And then right at the top of the interview, we talked about a movie that he got made a few years back called Dickster. Man, the role that he plays as the perfect Hollywood sleazebag, it's just so funny. I love the movie. I'll put a link where you can find it and rent it or buy it online. I watched it on Prime. It was just so much fun. Rob's a great guy. You're going to love his Hollywood stories. He just wanted to keep telling, and I just wanted to keep listening. So I'm going to shut my yapper, and without further ado, here's actor Robert Shafer. Awesome, man. This is pretty cool to talk to you. So thanks so much for taking the time.
Sure, Doug. My pleasure.
Awesome, man. So I finished Dickster today. So usually I start at the beginning of folks' career, but I want to talk about, obviously, of other things that have come out since that. But what was the inspiration for that?
Well, thank you for asking. Well, I think if you, it's pretty much a summation of 40 years in Hollywood is the inspiration. The original inspiration is a movie starring Peter O'Toole called The Stuntman. It's from 1980, and he plays this diabolical director in it. I mean, he's Peter O'Toole. So, you know, that part always appealed to me. And then not too long ago, I did a commercial with, what's his name, the David O. Russell. David O. Russell. So everybody was all scared of David O. Russell because he's kind of a monster, right? So that dynamic was very interesting to me. And then I wanted to just do a summation really on the phenomenon in Hollywood where losers think that they're winners.
Yeah.
And they talk that way, they act that way. I mean, Dick, you know, goes around, he's a winner.
He is.
And he wins at the end of the movie, doesn't he?
I know. My favorite part is even at the end when he's tied down and you think this guy can meet his demise, and for like a split second you're thinking, you know what, this guy's going to be human. No, not at all. He just reverts back to himself. It's great.
Thank you.
Cool, man. So how did you, is this the first thing you've ever written, or have you written other scripts over the years?
Oh, no. I've written tons of stuff. You know, I started out writing documentaries for A&E.
Really?
Yeah, I wrote the 50th anniversary of D-Day for A&E, which was quite an honor, I must confess. And, you know, those guys, I did a lot of research on D-Day, obviously, which is one of the singular greatest achievement in our lifetime.
Oh, yeah.
So it was funny because the people from A&E, you know, they all flew out here from New York, and we had this big story conference, and one of the executives said to me, Bobby, do you think you can come up with something new? And I'm like, something new? It's D-Day. It's history. What I can't come up with is the way that I arrange the facts. I mean, that'll be new. But I can't come up with anything new.
So was that like your first passion, writing, or was it acting first?
Well, acting is always my first passion, but acting and writing are so intertwined. They're the same thing. It has to do with the love of the language, and you have to really acting and writing are both all about reading. The more you read, the more fluent you are with the language, the better you are able to emote it and convey it, whether it's on the page or whether it's on the screen.
So what was it like casting? Because you casted for Dick. What was it like being on the other side of that audition process?
Well, I've done that before. It's not
have?
new. I have. It's always interesting because, for one, actors are saying your words, which is a thrill.
Yeah.
When they bother to do them correctly, that is, or take the time to learn them the way that you wrote them. I'm convinced that a lot of young actors are dyslexic. They approximate language. Sam Shepard, who is a great actor writer, in one of his plays, True West, which is I had the privilege of doing, he has an author's note at the very beginning of it, and he says, "Don't change anything. Do it exactly the way it's written."
Yeah.
So that means that you honor the commas and the parentheses and the ellipses and the periods. Now, Christopher Walken doesn't do any of those things, right?
Yeah.
When he gets a script, first thing that he does is he gets rid of all stage directions and all punctuation. That's true. He doesn't do punctuation, But as a rule, my advice to young actors is to do it exactly the way it's written. You should always assume that the writer is in the room, and the writer wants to hear what he wrote, not what you are faking your way into doing. You need to be. This game is about precision, right? It's like golf. Golf is about precision. Who strikes it best? Who is more precise? So the same thing applies here. I mean, not, there is some craft involved.
So here, one thing that I like to do, and I wanted to talk about Dickster because you were kind enough to send it to me. So I always like to talk about folks, the way they like grew up and how everything started. So where does your story begin? Where'd you grow up?
Well, I'm a West Virginian originally.
Oh, nice. Not too far from me. I'm in Jersey.
Is that where you live now, or where you're from?
Yeah, that's where I grew up. I moved to Oregon for a couple of years, but me and my wife moved back. They always pull you back in.
Are you back in Jersey?
Yep.
I have a bunch of friends that are from Jersey. They're good guys. Good guys. I'm a West Virginia guy. I moved away, though, when I was 11. I lived in Maryland and Michigan and Florida. And then I came out to Hollywood in 1980, and I've been grinding away ever since.
Wow. When did you get the bug? Like, what was it? Watching it on TV, or did you do a play and you just got that? You got hooked?
No, I fell in love with an actress, and she was really good, and so she encouraged me. You can do this, and so I went and I was watching her on her stats, and I realized, hey, I can do this. And so then I went to school. I went to school for 3 years. The best teacher in LA. I was fortunate enough to study with Peggy Fury, and Nick Cage and Sean Penn and Meg Ryan. Those were some of my classmates.
Oh my God, really? Wow.
Yeah. So it was a very competitive. Eric Stoltz. It goes on and on. Michelle Pfeiffer. It was very competitive, and so you always had to bring your A game. And fortunately, I was when I was growing up, I was a basketball player, so I had the ability to concentrate because basketball requires some pretty fierce concentration.
Oh yeah.
You like it has the same theory about acting as well. It is that that people are watching you, but that you have to stay enclosed in your own space, right?
Oh yeah.
The basketball players, when you're on the foul line, and you need both of them, and everybody's screaming. 20,000 people are screaming. They know everybody's screaming, but they have to be able to see the ball going over the front of the rim. You can't be looking up in the crowd and taking the victory wave there. You've got to pretty much be able to block that all out. Acting is the same thing.
Yeah, it's crazy. The people you said that were in your acting class, besides Michelle Pfeiffer, it's like all the people in not all the people that were in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, but 3 of them were in Fast Times. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, that was a big, huge hit. I mean, that was amazing how big that movie was.
So what was your first step in the journey? Obviously on your IMDb, the first credit that's on here is the Rosebud Beach Hotel in 84 as Rodney. Was there something before that?
Well, no, I did Highway to Heaven, I think. I did a TV show.
Oh, cool.
Well, I'm not sure. Those were about the same time. Those were both getting started. But, Rosebud, I was working with Christopher Lee.
That's amazing.
Christopher Lee, Dracula. I was standing next to Christopher Lee for my first movie. And so that was intimidating. I mean, plus the whole movie was full of all these just tremendous. Fran Drescher was in this movie. All these great character actors were in this movie. It was, I think my first night, in fact, I know, I did 18 takes. I had to do 18 takes until everybody was happy. And the crew was getting surly, and, it was brutal. And I was working with Colleen Camp, and I
love her.
And she was the hit girl. She was off of Apocalypse Now right then. And so I was intimidated by her, and she has this really weird sort of cadence. and so it took me 18 takes, and so I was just crushed on the way home. Everything I thought I knew was destroyed, and all my confidence was gone. And I got home, and the director called me. His name was Harry Hurwitz, and he said, "Hey, listen, you did fine. Everyone has to lose their cherry in one way or another, and I'll see you tomorrow, bright and early." So,
that must have been cool.
Yeah. But still, you gotta get trashed. You're not perfect every time,
If you don't have that happen, then, when it does happen down the road, it's going to hurt you even more, at least get, kicked in the teeth. Like a comedian goes on stage, they're going to bomb so many times before they even get a laugh for the most part. So that's good that you had that moment early, got it out of the way.
Well, one of them anyway.
That's awesome. So then Highway to Heaven, and then a couple movies back to back. You were the role of commercial director, Hollywood Shuffle, which is a great movie. I love that movie.
Well, it's a classic.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it stands the test of time, really. It's funny because when I talk about Dickster, I say, I learned the most valuable lesson in filmmaking from Robert Townsend 27 years ago. It only took me 27 years to go to realize the lesson was make your own movie.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, I don't know why it took me so long to make it, but everything happens for a reason, I believe, when it's time.
Yeah. So the one movie, and it's such a classic for my childhood because it seemed like there were so many movies that were kind of like this. There was Maniac Cop. I'm trying to think of another one. There was definitely another one besides. But anyway, you're Officer Joe Vickers, Psycho Cop. Were you like a fan of horror before this came about?
Well, sure. I mean, when I was a kid, I used to sit up and watch Creature Feature on Friday night, in the wee forbidden hours until 1 or 2, and then, the anthem played.
Yeah.
But it wasn't an obsession or anything. And interestingly enough, the way that I got that part was the audition was a Sam Shepard piece. And the one I was discussing, we did True West. And so I knew it cold. I'd been working on it in my Peggy Fury class. I was too young for it then. And later I did, like I said, I got to play it in Pasadena where Shepard wrote it. I did the 20th anniversary of it. But so the director said, director's name is Wallace Potts, and Wallace said, Bobby, are you familiar with True West? And I just seen John Malkovich and Gary Sinise do it, which launched both of their careers. Interestingly enough, I just seen them. I mean, it was 2 nights before. And he said, "Are you familiar with that?" I went, "Yeah, a little."
That's good.
Yeah, I didn't let on that I knew this thing. I was ready to put it up on the stage. I mean, here we go. Let's action. That's the only thing you had to say to me on this thing was action. I just nailed it. I mean, it wasn't even close because I could hear the other actors and they're just butchering it. And Shepard is very precise. Like I said, he uses those commas and those pauses and everything is. If you do it the way that he wrote it, it's musical.
Yeah.
In other words, he's invested. He's searching for a rhythm in his language, as all good writers are. If you adhere to that, you'll find that, and it's much easier to memorize and emote and all that. But so, I knew right away I had that part, and it took about 3 months for us to get it off the ground, and that included. For horror fans, this is a good thing to know. The producer on Psycho Cop was Jessica Raines, the daughter of one Claude Rains, the great Claude Rains.
Really?
Yeah, the Invisible Man. I mean, Casablanca, that actor, that Claude Rains, the great Claude Rains. Anyway, his daughter produced it. So the producer said, we're having trouble getting the money out of the executive producer. Maybe you should rent a costume and go over to his office and, see what you can shake loose. So I'm like, oh, yeah, I want to make this movie. I definitely want to make this movie. So I rent the costume. I go over there unannounced. I show up in Beverly Hills at, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And he doesn't know I'm coming. Here I am in the outfit, the black leather, the boots, the whole bit. And he's like, it's English. He's going to be like, what are you doing here, mate? And I'm like, I just want to talk to you about the movie. So I sit down, we talk. Yeah, I'm acting tough. I'm acting psycho for about a half an hour. So finally he looks at me and he goes, okay, we'll make it. So that was how I made it happen.
Look at that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was. And it really treated me well, because after the first one, I went to the Cannes Film Festival, which was great because I met a lot of people and I learned a lot about the movie business, for sure. We did make one more, which turned out to be also high art and markedly different films. I think I can announce right here, right now, Doug, that I've written the script for Psycho Cop 3.
Really? That's awesome, man.
Hip Hop Psycho Cop.
Hip Hop Psycho Cop? That's awesome.
Crazy ass cracker gonna shoot you if you smoke that rock. Bang, boom, he in the room. Got the 9 out, blasted and he laughing too. Fuck you, boy and brew.
That's amazing. How long ago did you write that?
I finished it about a year ago. I finished it.
Oh, nice.
So we had a screening of Psycho Cop Returns a couple months ago here in Hollywood, a new screening room, and Adam Rifkin was there, the director of Psycho Cop Returns. And he loves the script. He wants to do it. His producer came running up to me after the screening and was like, oh, my God, we need to make Psycho Cop 3. Oh, that's what we should be making. And I'm like, funny you should mention that. I happen to have the script. Well, let me get that over to you.
That is so cool. So when you saw that screening a few months ago, what was it like after all these years just watching people enjoy it?
Well, it was great. It was actually the first time we'd ever seen it screened the way it was intended to be seen.
Oh, wow.
The director's cut on a big screen with a full house. We're, frankly, cinephiles. This is Hollywood, after all.
Yeah.
William Lustig, the director of Maniac Cop, was also at the screening.
Okay.
Yeah, there was great. I had a great moment with him before it started. I said, it was the first time I'd ever met him. And I said, Bill, people have been coming up to me for the last 25 years, and they've been saying, who would win, Psycho Cop or Maniac Cop? And he goes, well, I said, you're looking at him.
Awesome.
Oh, it's too easy. Too easy.
Oh my God. How quick after the first one did they say, hey, we're going to do a second one? Because I know you're a producer on the second one.
I was
Co-producer? Okay.
Well, what they did was originally when I I signed a 5-picture deal.
For Psycho Cop?
Yeah, I signed a 5-picture deal. And what it was that they had laddered all the incremental salary increases into it, right? So that way I wouldn't be able to hold them up if the thing was a hit.
Yeah.
They weren't going to let me renegotiate after every film. I mean, every film already had its price set. But I was so ecstatic. It was $1.2 million. I was like, I've done it. I'm the next big horror villain. I'm Freddy Krueger. I have a $1.2 million contract. And then the distributors killed the film. The first one, Maniac Cop and Psycho Cop was handled by the same distributor.
Oh my God.
And Maniac Cop was their love child. We were the stepchild, so we got bupkis out of them. So now we waited 3 years, and we started. That contract was no longer in play, so I did negotiate for the next one. But that was Rifkin, and Rifkin, he's wild. He's true cinema verite genius. That guy, he's marching to his own drummer. He's not trying to be anybody else. He doesn't want to make, Hal Needham movie, okay, or Tim Burton movies. He wants to make Adam Rifkin movies.
That's good.
And I think he's been successful doing it. So his last picture with Burt Reynolds, the last movie star. I mean, I didn't know that he loved Burt Reynolds, and he did. As a kid, who didn't love Burt Reynolds?
Yeah.
How could you not love Burt Reynolds? If you don't love Burt Reynolds, there's something wrong with you. You're not American. In fact, you should probably go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, Burt was the king. Oh, Burt's kid, Quentin, was one of the editors on Dickster.
Oh, really? That's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, sure, because I like all those connections to old Hollywood. And I was interested in talking to him about his dad. Of course, I didn't realize that he and his dad weren't the closest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh, yeah. No, Quentin was in the Lonnie Anderson camp. So, yeah, he was sticking with mommy over there on Ventura Boulevard, and there was, Burt down in Florida. So I had just finished reading Burt's last autobiography, which is great. I didn't know that he knew Mae West and Betty Davis, and he was really a serious actor in the heyday of New York acting, and that always interests me. Because that's where Peggy came from. She was Lee Strasberg's right hand. Marlon Brando and James Dean. That's who Peggy knew.
Oh, wow.
That's who Peggy talked about in the class, was Marlon Brando and James Dean. So she has your attention. You're listening. And then Lee Strasberg would say, anybody that wants to watch an acting class, go watch Godfather 2. The scene between Al Pacino and Lee Strasberg in that is Lee Strasberg was Al Pacino's acting coach. So now here they are in Cuba, in the mob, and that scene those scenes between those two is just, it doesn't really get any better ever. Of course, we're talking about Godfather 2.
Yeah, of course. It's hard to top. Like that, Godfather 1 and 2 are like the two best. So we talk a lot of movie sequels on the podcast that I do, and like Godfather 2, it's really hard to top a first film. But when a first film is that good, and it can even be neck and neck with it, it's kind of phenomenal. It's tough.
Well, by layering the past into it the way they did with the De Niro, the early Corleone.
Yeah,
that really raised the ante and really fleshed it out, because we saw who he really was. I mean, he was a stone cold killer. So the old guy that Brando was playing was still a stone cold killer. It just the years how they softened him. Yeah, but there's a great story about Brando. They didn't want him. The studio said, "Oh no way, there's no way." In fact, they put out a whole bunch of conditions on him. He had to sign up. He wasn't going to get paid. Until after it was over, and then he had to put up a bond. I mean, there was crazy stuff.
Wow, why?
No, Well, it was difficult, and plus he got 17% of the gross. That was his contract at the time. So no, he didn't. He didn't need to work. He didn't want to work. He had this island in Tahiti. What was he doing? I mean, But what happened was Coppola went out to his house, and ostensibly under the guise that they were going to do a makeup and hair test. And what happened was that he brought wine and bread and olives, and suddenly Brando morphed into, Vito Corleone. And when Coppola took the test footage, that was 15 minutes, back to the studio, they were like, "We gotta have him." So, even Brando was auditioning for that. So, it just goes to show you.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that. I never knew the story about all the conditions with that, but I know for Superman, maybe he learned from that one, because for Superman, he's like barely in the movie. He made $3.7 million for that little role.
17% of the gross to get you that.
Crazy. It's insane.
Yeah, that's good. That's good money when you can get it.
Oh, no, definitely. So at this time, like right after like Psycho Cop returns, are you writing? Is this when you're writing at A&E?
Yeah, and doing a lot of spec script writing as well. We were also shooting a lot of short films. I think I did 4 films for Playboy Channel.
Really?
Yeah, but we were producing them and writing them, and my buddies were all directing them, and I was starring in them, and I, frankly, I didn't mind mauling that Playboy talent. Because those movies, the one thing is, nobody wants to see the guy, right? You're just there to showcase the woman. So, so you can get away with it.
Well, that's pretty cool. It's funny. On your IMDb, there's not a lot of this stuff, so it's pretty cool that I'm talking to you. So what other spec scripts did you write? Did you write any other scripts that got made, but you just didn't get writing credits?
Yes, but it not released.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't until Dickster that I got the feature done.
Oh, cool.
But, I wrote a TV pilot. I had a series where people wanted me to play John Wayne, which would have been, that would have been really great.
Yes.
Because I really, really like the Duke. I mean, the greatest American movie star of all time, really. 175 movies and only died twice. I mean, that's good.
I know.
Those are good. When you gotta ask, do I live? That's the first question. Do I live? Does this character live? Duke never had to worry about that.
No, never. I think he's in the realm like him, Eastwood, Burt Reynolds. There's like just these actors that if people don't like them, there's something wrong with them.
Yeah, well, I was a Mitchum. I love Robert Mitchum.
Oh, yeah.
Lee Marvin. Like I said, Sam Shepard, I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, Bronson.
I mean, young guys are look like they're serious. I never understood why America felt like we had to go other places to find leading men.
Yeah.
We've got all these English and Australian guys flopping around here. Who needs them?
Yeah. No, I'm a huge Charles Bronson fan, like, because we've been on this lockdown. I already watched like all the Death Wishes, watched The Mechanic the other night.
No one better than Charles Bronson. I should have left him out.
He's the best.
I met him.
Really?
I used to. Oh yeah, yeah. No, I've been lucky. I've met everybody, and worked with some good people too. But seriously, famous people. Dolly Parton. I made a commercial with Kenny Rogers. I mean, how much fun was that?
That's awesome. The Gambler.
Yeah. Hanging out with Kenny Rogers was, I mean, all you're doing is asking Kenny questions all day. So what was that like when you discovered the Eagles? That must have been fun. You guys hanging out at the house on Sunset, huh? Smoking dope.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a 1-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
So then from there, after Psycho Cop, you played a cop a few different times, a sheriff, and you were on a lot of different shows. And man, so what was it like to be on such a hit show like The Office? Like, what was that process of landing that role as a very famous like meme? Because people, if you look online, if I'm sure, I don't know if you Google your name or your character's name, but they mention that as if you go to like a family party of like your spouses and you go there, and that's how you do it. Bob Vance. Hi, Doug. Hi, I'm Doug. I'm married to so and so.
Well, listen, getting that at the time, it was just another TV show, right?
Yeah,
I mean, when I got it, then it turned into a recurring role, and then I wanted it to be a bigger role, and so we had no way of knowing that the show was going to be bigger now that it's off the air.
Yeah.
I mean, who could have foreseen that? No one. I mean, it's way bigger than it was when it was on. So the Vance Refrigeration, but Bob Vance is a cottage industry. I really don't even know if I had anything to do with it. I guess I did, but there's shirts and hats and baby clothes and blankets and socks and keychains and I've had to buy every bit of it.
Yeah.
So I've got the best collection in the world. But it's funny because when they first launched that brand, they were NBC really guarded that copyright and that trademark jealously. I mean, if somebody tried to put up something, make T-shirts out of it, no, they would take it down. But now they don't supervise it at all. So there's pages and pages and pages of it.
It's just it's so crazy. Like you mentioned, when that show first came on, it was a bunch of people that everyone on the show, nobody was big. Everybody was no names. Usually some shows that become hits, they have at least one face. So you're like, I know that guy. But that show just had a lot of people that were on other things that maybe didn't work. But it's such a classic show. And you stuck around for 25 episodes? That's amazing.
I did 25, total, actually 30, because 5 of them were double episodes. But I think we did 187 total. It's some of the greatest television ever done, frankly. And not just because I was privileged to be part of it, although looking, a couple of times on the set, I remember marveling, going, holy crap, look at this talent. I mean, when we were doing a rapid take scene, right, where everybody was chiming in, and it was just rapid fire. And I remember thinking, wow, this is great. Because like I said, it achieved a musicality in the comedy, in the rhythm of the comedy.
Yeah.
So everybody was serious about the work. That makes all the difference. And of course, we had the collision of hungry actors and hungry writers. And so you got to have both of those things in TV. I mean, there's no, if you don't have the writers, it doesn't matter how pretty and the show looks, it's not going to make it.
No, that's true. And exactly, like comedy shows, the biggest thing is timing, and just so many of the way it was written, which I'm hoping they did what you were saying earlier, is did it by the script, because man, they just nailed the timing of so many jokes in that show. Like even early on, that's what she said, and there's just so many times that it's so good. Or even you wanting to always like knock Michael's head off.
Well, without saying as much. Because people used to say, why doesn't Bob just beat Michael up? Well, it would be funny.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you go from there? I mean, there's nowhere to go from there. The threat of violence is always more comfortable than the actual violence, That's just something that you learn from working on stage, right? You want to be really picky about putting the audience through, too much of it, right? That's something that's kind of screwed up horror films now. Is that they're not scary, they're gory.
I know, I hate that.
There's a huge difference between scary and gory. I mean, I don't know. I did a movie it's 10 years ago now. It's called Knife Point. And it's a home invasion robbery, right? And so I play the father in this, and my family gets raped and murdered and killed, and I mean, it's just, it's an hour and 30 minutes or 90 minutes of nonstop hell. But nothing was scary. It was all about the blood, nothing but the blood, you know? And so, I mean, as an actor, it was a rough experience to do it. I wasn't feeling that great after I did it, I must say. The funny thing, Doug, was I had to go film on a Friday, and then the next day, Saturday, I had to go shoot another film where I was playing a preacher, a minister, and so I'd just been brutalized for 3 weeks. Where people were getting raped and getting a gun, 38 shoved up my ass. I mean, all kinds of bad things are happening. And so then I got to go into this church. There's 200 people sitting there, and they're waiting for me to give this sermon about love and faith and forgiveness. And I didn't really have a whole lot of time to prepare it, and there was just way too much copy. So I was really struggling. It was like, how am I going to get through this? And the director came up to me and he said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Well, I just wrapped this horror film yesterday." And I'm afraid that I haven't recovered. But anyway, we managed to get it out.
But I think you said it perfect. I think it's too much gore now. I'm a huge Hitchcock fan, like a lot of people, and he has this great little 2-minute clip. It's on YouTube. I watch all the time if I'm writing or want to be inspired, and it's so cool. He talks about a group of people sitting around a table, and there's a bomb under the table just ticking and ticking, and he's seeing it explode wouldn't be as impactful or as suspenseful as not showing it and just maybe just the sound of it. Let your imagination. I think that's now the movies like Hostel and so many of them. It's just I don't want to see a guy eating a guy's leg.
Yeah, no, I mean, if someone were to make a clever, scary movie like Psycho Cop 3,
yes,
no, we're going to be going for the scare. Also, Joe is in direct communications with Satan. We had to bring him into 2020.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, he's got an iPhone. He's talking to Satan. Okay, there's a direct line to Beelzebub. So that just gives me a chance to really, play with the Book of Revelations. I don't know if you're familiar with that book from the Bible, but it's pretty spooky.
Man, that'll be so cool. I really hope that. I'm hoping that especially the guy came up to you and said, "We got to make it," because that'd be so cool. All these years later.
I hadn't wanted to do it. I thought, well, I'm done with it. I've already done it. What else am I going to do with it? Which is exactly what I said to Steve Carell when he left the show. I said, hell, you've already done it. What else can you do with it?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just repeating yourself, right? I mean, it just becomes the same thing over and over. I mean, Michael wasn't going to change. You can't change him. He has to stay the same. He has to stay 12 years old. He's essentially a 12-year-old dude, right? Yeah. He has to stay 12 years old to stay funny. If he suddenly becomes 18 or, a 31-year-old adult or 45-year-old adult, he's not going to be funny.
Yeah.
So Steve Carell knows comedy. He knows it was time to go. Also, they didn't necessarily want to pay his price. And, that's what happens when a show's a hit. So somehow we managed to slog through those last 2 years, but it wasn't the same after he left.
No, I know when you have somebody that big, but yeah, no, he put it in his dues, man. Watching Too Funny to Fail on Hulu with him on the Dana Carvey show, and you just see all these things that he was in, and he was this close from it happening, and then that show came along and changed his life. Well,
he's also chosen wisely. That really becomes the key thing for actors who are on the A track, right? Tom Cruise always chose wisely. The other guys that were his competitors at that time, Sean Penn, Timmy Hutton, that whole era of guys. There was 20 guys in the crowd, but only 1 or 2 of them emerged.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Right. Not everybody gets to stay up at the top of the ride. The roller coaster goes up and down. So choosing the material, you can end it pretty quick with bad choices.
No, that's true. I interviewed a guy. It's funny. You're the third person that I've interviewed that was in Stiletto. I've interviewed R.A. Mihailov, who was in that Knife Point movie. And
Yeah.
DB Sweeney I talked to a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
He, similar thing you just said. So he was at a point in his career that he was like, it was amazing. Like he was like, I was basically just, I didn't have to audition. They were offering movies. So he had that Love movie that came out, that hockey player Love movie. I can't think of the name. But he had either that, they were going to give it to him, or Mighty Ducks, the head coach. And he goes, looking back, obviously the other one's more popular, but he's like, you know what? I never did a rom-com before, so I wanted to do that. But you're right. It's like there's so many times you have like open door A or B, and you never know what's going to happen until it happens.
The Cutting Edge.
Cutting Edge, yeah. Cool movie. I love that movie.
We worked obviously on Stiletto, but DB and I did a little, he wanted to do, he did a little pilot, and I went out and played a part in that for him.
Oh, sweet.
He's a damn good actor, and RA is, RA.
Oh, yeah.
He's truly a presence, and, I just kid behind him the whole time we were on Stiletto. Well, Stiletto was written by Nick Vallelonga.
I know, yeah.
Just won the Academy Award for Green Book.
Unbelievable, right?
And he produced it. No, well, the minute I read the script, the email I sent back to him said, "Hey, Nick, just finished the script. Prepare your Oscar speech."
Oh, that's awesome. And he sent it to you, or you just for audition-wise, or?
Well, no, he sent it to me. I did audition for it. I did not, unfortunately, get, although probably one of the best auditions I've ever done.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, but I did not get hired on that. They did a local hire on the part that I was up for, and I don't do local hires.
Oh, what's that mean? What's local hire? Is that just like a local casting agent?
They shot it down in Louisiana, so they hired Screen Actors Guild talent from Louisiana.
Oh, okay.
So they don't have to fly you there, put you up in a hotel for a week, give you per diems, and then, it's way more expensive to have me come in and do a week than to hire somebody down there.
Yeah, when I talked to DB, he actually just released a little like short film that he did, a comedy with him and Sean Astin. Because him and Sean Astin worked in the 90s together, and he said when he ran into him in the airport like a couple of years ago, he's like, "I'm going to write something for us to do," and they just did it.
I saw something on Facebook about it. Something about Irishman, right?
Yeah, it's called Two Dumb Mix. It's actually pretty funny. It's in like he wanted to do in the vein of like the old like Charlie Chaplin kind of thing. So it's really like these two alcoholic guys. But yeah, it's like 4 minutes long, but it's really cool. It's really funny.
Well, he's looking to raise the money.
Yeah.
So, have money, we'll film. I made Dickster. I shot Dickster in 6 days.
Wow.
My budget, what do you think my budget on Dickster is?
Now that you said it was 6 days, now I have a little bit of an easier guess. I'm going to say 40 grand.
No, the total film, well, that's actually about correct for the shooting budget. Total budget, $75,000. I made it for 75 grand.
So for 75 grand, you made that. Wow.
I did. But again, I called in every favor I had. The movie was directed by my cousin Chris Ray,
who's cool,
becoming a pretty accomplished horror director. The crew was what's the name of that schlock outfit over there? Not Troma. They do all the mockbusters. No.
I'm trying to think. I know.
Anyway, that crew was from that outfit, and so they're fast. It wasn't. Also, we were on sound stages, right?
Yeah.
So everything's pre-lit, everything's pre-dressed. I was doing 15-page days and rapping early.
Oh wow.
Yeah, the actors were so good. Listen, if you've got Tim Russ and Tim Abel and Richard Grieco cranking it out, you are in business.
Was Richard Grieco one of your favors?
Well, he's a good guy. He was only there. That was the advantage of shooting green screen from Talking Heads, is that they could pop in, we would shoot it when they got there, and then when they left, we would get back to our other scenes.
Yeah.
really the logistics of the shooting is the most important part. Obviously, aside from structuring the screenplay so that it can be a full narrative, beginning, middle, and end, with nobody.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it's really cool. Calvin Tenor from The Office was in it too.
Yes, he is. The key thing, and what a part he played. I mean, he's never played that part again, ever.
Yeah,
ever. Tell me when he's going to play the gay wardrobe assistant. Talk about typecasting.
Yeah.
Well, we sort of just sprung that on those guys, right at the end there. Like, we want to flame these guys up a little bit. Dick is obviously drunk the whole movie. That's the way you soften him, that is a drunk is not, we don't hold them as responsible for mean language. Right. And Dick doesn't say faggot. He says cocksucker, It's milder.
Yeah. And he pisses on the script.
It's really a love story. You can tell by me talking about it. But the thing that I wanted to do, Doug, was if you think of it as in comedy, there's a style of comedy, farce comedy, French farce. And so I studied Moliere and Feydeau and these French farcists. Noises Off was the big English version of a French farce. Doors are always opening. People are coming and going. It's fast. So that's what I wanted to do, was make a mockumentary at farce pace. If you think of comic pace, remember record players?
Yeah.
There was 33, 45, and 78, right? Well, Christopher Guest makes movies at 33. The Office is at 45, and Dick Dickster's at 78. It's nonstop. And even though we are limited by the sets, and there's so much going on, there's so much action, and there's 3 cameras, which keeps the cameras moving at all times. So, it looks a lot busier than it really is.
That's cool that you're able to make that, man. That's really awesome. So one thing I always love to ask people, and I know we didn't really touch on, because you wanted to do acting pretty young, but was there anything else that you wanted to do besides that? Any other career path that you had in mind?
I was modeling. I proved to be too tall for that. 6'5" is too tall.
That's pretty tall.
Well, models, you go in there and you fit the clothes. They don't make the clothes fit me. They go, wait, we need extra long. No. So, like I said, I was in that world. So I was working with still cameras, which was helpful. Learning how to work with still cameras really was a foundation. And it's still one of the most critical aspects of being an actor, is shooting, great still photographs.
Oh, yeah.
That people look at and go, let's hire this guy. Let's bring this guy in and have him read. He looks interesting. So it always comes down to taking those pictures, and that's where, you have to learn how to do that.
That's right. What kind of modeling were you doing? Just like print modeling
Fashion.
for like ads? Fashion? Wow.
Yeah.
You're like towering over everybody else. 6'5". Everybody else is short.
Well, 6'1", 6'2", most of those guys are.
Man, dude, this has been awesome. What's one film? Obviously, Dick Dickster. I'll put the link in the notes to the Prime, so folks can check that out. But was there any other movie throughout your career or show you're on that you're like, man, this is so good, but maybe just people just didn't have that release or got out there the way it should have?
Well, many of them. I mean, you have higher expectations for things. I was recently cut out of a film, the first time that's ever happened.
Really?
And that was devastating. I was furious, but I had to learn. I had to let it go. I mean, I did some amazing work in Zach Galifianakis' Between Two Ferns movies. I played his dad.
No way.
Yeah. And I don't know why. I mean, I shot a week. I mean, they wrote extra scenes. I was feeling on top of the world about that part, and actually, then somebody went to see it, and they said, "Well, you're not in it."
Oh, they didn't even tell you?
No, no, no. And then somebody said, well, you need to find out. I'm like, no way would I give anybody the satisfaction. You know, I mean, if you're not in, you're not in. But the work I did was great. So, and, you know, those are the things that I mean, there's certain actors or certain films or certain parts that are measuring sticks, you know, about your evolution. You know, acting is like golf. You never are perfect. You never have a perfect round ever.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not even the best ones. And so, I mean, one of the great ones, Ben Hogan, the Hawk, said that you only hit 5 perfect shots in a round. And this is a guy who's out, you know, tooling around shooting 66. But he was only happy with 5 of them. So, you know, again, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, Doug. You know, perfection, precision, those things have to be. Otherwise, what's the point?
No, of course you got to strive for it at least, because at least if you miss, you know, you're close to where you want to be. But if you shoot low, you're not gonna be anywhere close.
That's what I tell actors about training. I mean, sure, you might be making something and laughing it up with Flava Flav, and then next thing you know, Anthony Hopkins is standing there. And, you know, if you don't have the game, well, it's funny. A friend of mine worked with Anthony Hopkins on Surviving Picasso, where he's playing Picasso, which was one of the most complicated guys ever. And this actress, Diana Venora, she's a method actress from New York. She played Al Pacino's wife in Heat. If you remember
Oh,
her
okay,
scene.
yeah.
Yeah, she was brilliant in that. But anyway, she was playing one of his wives in Surviving Picasso, and she was working herself into a method frenzy, you know, pacing around on the set, and Hopkins is just sitting there watching her. And he calls her over and he says, Diane, what's happening? And she says, well, you know, I'm thinking about the lines, and I'm thinking I'm going to just do this. And he goes, Diana, sometimes the lines just need to be said. That's too good.
That is awesome, man.
One more acting story.
Yeah, definitely.
Marlon Brando and Sam Shepard. So, you know, directors, Marlon Brando really tortured directors. You know, they weren't used to this guy. I mean, he you know, marched to his own drummer. So he looked at Sam Shepard and he said, Sam, just because they say action doesn't mean you got to do anything. That is but it's so wise, you know, when you think about it. Like when I was working with Zach, I mean, I always just delayed. I was in no hurry to do anything.
Yeah.
Why? You know, just wait. Because in improv, if you wait, you know, people are going to hang themselves. I mean, it's just a matter of seconds, really. It always happens. But it's interesting, you know, if you take some of that. I you know, obviously, you know, by talking to me that I'm a huge believer in studying and theater and reading and learning your craft. And, you know,
Yeah.
I see a lot of that missing. You know, I was working with this TV heartthrob. We were making a movie called Friended to Death, which I wish that would have done better because, you know, it was so topical with, you know, with the Facebook deal. So I said to this actor, so have you done any theater? And he looked at me like I was crazy. Oh, hell no. No, hell no. Are you kidding? No way would I do that. I'm like, what do you mean? But you call yourself an actor, but you wouldn't do theater? What?
Yeah, that's how all those people would start. Like in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it was like New York City, like William Sadler, you know, all those guys started there.
William Sadler, I like him. He's underrated.
Oh, he's awesome. I was lucky enough to interview him last year, and dude, it was very cool because he was so down to earth. He is like one of those guys that didn't know like who he was, which is even cooler, I guess.
Yeah.
But no, so one thing you mentioned before, you were talking about Marlon Brando and Sam Shepard. So I interview actor Larry Hankin every week. I'm helping him put together like possibly like a one-man play that he's going to do out in L.A.
I know who he is.
He's a great guy. I talk to him every Saturday for like the last 4 months. But anyway, so he told me a cool story about James Garner. He was in an episode of the Rockford Files, and they were in the middle of a scene, and James Garner didn't like the way the scene was. So instead of like finishing it, he just walked off camera, and Larry asked him afterwards, like, why would you do that? He goes, because if you finish the scene, then they can use that. They're not gonna do what's good for you. So what you have to do is just walk right off camera, so they can't use that take.
That's great. I met Marlon Brando.
Really?
I went up and introduced myself to him, and I talked to him for about 10 minutes. He was really cool. Yeah, we were talking the actor talk.
Did you have anything in mind when you saw him? Because I'm sure a lot of the people you grow up admiring, it's like when you see him in public, you're like I ran into John Starks at the Garden. I'm a big Nick fan, and I was a kid, and I'm like, man, you know what? My whole life growing up watching this guy, I was like 25 at the time, and I had nothing to say. But did you have anything at least ready?
Oh yeah. No, well, what I had just read his biography, his autobiography. So and I had just did a movie, and I had borrowed from his autobiography to shoot this movie. So I told him about that, and it was funny because he looked at me and he goes, "Well, I didn't actually write the book, Bobby." I'm like, "Yeah, but they're your stories, Mr. Brando. They're your stories."
That must have been such a trip, especially how much you liked him and meeting him and be able to pick his brain for even 10 minutes.
Well, I met Shepard one night. I was bartending on Sunset Strip, and he came into the bar, and it was a place where rich producers went to meet young models, really. And he was looking around, and of course, I'd already bought him a beer. I mean, there was nobody changing hands out of that pocket. He looks at me and he goes, "What kind of place is this?" And I go, "Well, it gets a little dangerous." And he looks at me and goes, "Dangerous is a loaded 45. And I'm like, I'm doing tough guy dialogue with Sam Shepard. "Hello, tough guy dialogue over here."
So that's what you were doing, when you first got out there to Hollywood? You were bartending?
Well, yeah. I mean, I worked in restaurants and, sold, brokered oil rigs, and I did all kinds of silly stuff.
You gotta do what you gotta do, especially that you love what you're doing. So in the beginning, you got to make sure,
You have to keep a roof over your head. You have to eat.
Yeah.
And you have to, every cent that you make has to go into the business. The business is me, the product. So,
yeah,
it's classes, and it's wardrobe, and it's pictures, and it's, little films. It's all the things that, it's full on business. Sometimes the product isn't that good. You know what I mean?
Oh man, that's awesome. Well, no, hey, this has been awesome. Thank you for taking the time. I hope Psycho Cop 3. I want that to happen because that'd be
it's happening.
So cool. And you're so passionate about it. It's pretty cool.
Well, it'll be good. I'm gonna really scare people with it.
Nice. Thanks for letting me pick your brain for an hour.
All right, pal.
Man, Rob was awesome. I love talking to him. I could have listened to all those stories all day long because most of the time people only wanted to do an hour, which I was fine with. That was awesome. But when they wanted to keep going, when he's like, "One more Hollywood story," I'm like, yes, please. I wish I could have just said, "Keep going. I got all day." So, man, so many things from that. I would love to see the deleted footage of his role as Zach Galifianakis' dad in Between Two Ferns. But I loved his talk about Marlon Brando and The Godfather. He loves the history of film, which that's what I love. That's why me and Jamie started this podcast, because we love the idea of filmmaking, and that's why we love to talk to people behind it. And the fact that he's going to do a Psycho Cop 3, he started rapping for me, and the fact that he was the reason he showed up in a cop outfit to get the first Psycho Cop made. Brilliant. Thank you, Rob, if you're listening. And now your homework, which is amazing homework, because this movie's so hard to find, it's actually free on YouTube. You can watch the first Psycho Cop and Psycho Cop Returns, which has, legendary actress Julie Strain in it. So find it on YouTube. I'll put the link in the notes as well. And don't forget to review, rate, share our podcast. Follow us on all social media at Sequels Only. And don't forget to check out our website, sequelsonly.com. Good night.